There are songs that he does that he will always be on the radio simply because they're just that damn good. Hey everybody, TC Kirkham here, the Kirkham Report. Welcome to Influencers, the show where I talk about the artists who have influenced my personal tastes in music over the years. I'm going to talk about somebody that most people laugh about. And, you know, it's quite uneasy to understand why they laugh about the guy because, well, number one, he's super successful, has been for 50, almost 50 years, and it's something that never changes. He does the same kind of music, the same style. Nowadays, he's not doing his own writing as much as he used to, but even then, he recorded other artists' music, other songwriters' music, as much as his own. But there's always been something about the guy that I've loved. And so I will bring him to you one album at a time. And we are talking about this man, Barry Manilow. This is a very rare album. This is Manilow's first album released in 1973. This is a promo copy. I finally snagged this last year from Don and Mary over at Two Hip Chicks for a song. It is released on Bell before Bell was bought out by Arista. And this album is pretty much identical to the album that was reissued, but this album didn't really have any big hits off of it. In fact, it kind of bombed at the retail. A couple of singles were released from it. The original version of Could It Be Magic came out, but it never really did anything, which is a shame because it is a good album. Now, after he started having success, it was reissued in 1975 under the title Barry Manilow 1. This album has been remixed on several album songs. I think one of them was even re-recorded. This includes the remixed version of Could It Be Magic that became a hit for him in 1975, but it wasn't the album that made him a star. And I'm sorry, does the man take terrible pictures or is it just me? These he does not take the best pictures in the world. At least he didn't at the time. Both of these albums have some great songs on them. I mean, the same album. They have great songs on them. The opening track on side one, Sing It, is a recording of Barry recording in one of those old recording booths when he was 9, I think. And it's very cute. Other than which most people know, Could It Be Magic, which opens side two. There are three songs that really jump out at me off of this album. One of These Days is a great lonely love ballad like he was able to do. 7 More Years is a gentleman who is pining for his love while serving a prison sentence. And his version of Friends, which he produced a few years earlier for Bette Midler, terrific version here. Of course, there's other stuff on here that he's become known for, and this is a Columbia Record Club release. And, of course, it is on the mid-70s Arista Dark label. I always loved Barry's style of writing, and I know people laugh at him. He's been kind of the, you know, the joke of the industry for a while because of his. He's almost a crooner by modern standards. Of course, most of his big hits came in the latter half of the '70s, and I don't know. I don't have a problem with that. I really, like I said, I was always into soft rock and AC, thanks to my mom. and Barry was one of the biggest. His second album, Barry Manilow 2, was originally released on Bell, which I did not know, and I would love to get a copy of that too. This is the Arista release. This includes the song that made him a star, Mandy. Mandy was originally released on Bell, which should have clued me in that the album was originally released on Bell. Duh. And also includes It's a Miracle, which was this up-tempo, wonderful song that became a favorite of mine. This is on the light blue Arista label from the mid-70s. Um, in addition to that, there is some great stuff on this. He shows off on everything that he loved big band and show tunes when he was growing up. On the first album, it's Cloudburst. On this album, it's Avenue C. Um, this album also features three other songs, again, album tracks that I love. I Want to Be Somebody's Baby. Again, his typical, this one an up-tempo love song. Something's Coming Up, which talks about everything that could happen in your life and something's coming up right at you. And a beautiful song about a housewife named Sandra. And yeah, it's cloying and it's very 70s story song, but that's what Manilow was an expert at doing. Um, love those. I love this album. Terrific stuff. This came out originally in late 1974 on Bell and was reissued in 1975 on Arista at the same time Barry Manilow 1 was reissued. And there's the back cover of Barry with his dog. 1975 proved to be the watershed year for him. In addition to having Mandy at the late part of 74 and early 75, It's a Miracle, a hit off here, Could It Be Magic, a hit off the first album. Then came I Write the Songs, and it was the lead-off single for his third album and my favorite Barry Manilow album, Trying to Get the Feeling. This album came out in early 1976, and just wall to wall great stuff on it. It opens with one of my favorite songs by him, New York City Rhythm, which is this up-tempo tribute to New York that is just amazing. The title track, which was written by David Pomerantz, is next on the list. Geez, there's some coverware here. Next up, a song called Why Don't We Live Together, about a couple that's obviously moving forward in their relationship. I need to take it out because I can't read the I can't read the back cover. Here's the inner sleeve. Um, after Why Don't We Live Together, one of my all-time favorite Manilow songs, and the one that everybody knows because it was used on the television show for years, Bandstand Boogie. Barry took the Les Elgart song that had been used for Bandstand and wrote lyrics for it, and it is terrific. He used American Bandstand used it for years as their opening and closing theme. You're Leaving Too Soon is another one of his melancholy ballads, and She's a Star is this terrific story about a young woman who rises to stardom and the life she's left behind. Um, Always thought She's a Star was one of his best album tracks ever. I still love that song. Side 2 opens with his hit I Write the Songs. It's followed by Sure As I'm Standing Here, another great little song written by he and Adrian Anderson, who was one of his top lyricists at the time. Then A Nice Boy Like Me, Lay Me Down, and Beautiful Music, which you hear a lot of on his live performances of. Um, I actually picked this up in the spring of 1976, and it became the first album. It was the first Barry Manilow album I ever bought, and I became a huge fan of it. Now, just because it deserves to be brought up, in 1979, Ray Stevens released an album. I can't remember the name of the album, but the album was a parody of Manilow stuff, basically. And it was a parody. The album cover was parodied like this, with the single, Ray Stevens parodied like this. The single was called I Need Your Help, Barry Manilow. It was very cute. I have that single somewhere. I can't get to it, but I always thought that was fun. Next up, another one from the Columbia Record Club, right there. This one's for you from 1977. Um, Late 76, actually, I think. This includes This One's For You, the studio version of Daybreak, which wouldn't become a hit until the next album, Weekend in New England, and his number one hit, right? Looks Like We Made It. It also includes, there's not a bad single song on this album either. I love most of the songs on here. Some of there's a couple of songs that are kind of big bandy that I listened to less when I was a child than I did when I got older. But You Ought to Be Home with Me is another great uh, album track. And Riders to the Stars, this is another one similar to She's a Star, only this talks about finding fame and having fun with it. Another song that became an instant favorite of mine from Manilow. This again on the with the lyric sleeve, using that statue from the previous album. And this is on the, is this on the dark label? No, this is on the light label. So, I haven't played any of these for a few years. Haven't gotten around to playing them on my new turntable. Um, but I listen to them on Spotify, so I don't really need to. Next up, Manilow's first live album, Barry Manilow Live. This is a gatefold, 2-record set. This is the album which produced the hit single version of Daybreak, which was first found in its studio form on This One's For You. This album also includes his Very Strange medley, which has always been a favorite part for Manilow fans. It's a medley of the commercial jingles he either wrote or performed on when he was just getting started in the business, including Band-Aid and McDonald's and a number of other things. It's a lot of fun, and this album is a lot of fun. Now, if you get the CD of this, the original CD dropped all the dialogue and the 3 different parts of beautiful music and squished it so it would fit on one disc. It's been restored since then, so if you have the newer CD, you have a two CD set with it properly done. Um, this is a great album, and I don't do. I'm not a big fan of live albums, strangely enough. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. This one definitely ranks as good. It's fun to listen to, and remains his only number one album. It was a great deal of fun when it came out the summer of '77. Next up, another great album, his 1978 album, Even Now. This came out in the spring or early summer of 1978 and produced the hits, the title track, and Copacabana at the Copa, and Somewhere in the Night, which had been a hit just about 2 years earlier by Helen Reddy off of one of her albums. Um, Again, there's some great stuff on here as far as album tracks. I quite like his song called A Linda Song, which is one of those melancholy lost love, lost friendship songs that he does. Um, Can't Smile Without You is also on this album, but the live version is the one that became a hit. Um, it was, although that might actually be the live one on this one, I'm not sure. This is the first one to have a really nice, harder, thicker cardboard sleeve. Lyrics again, and of course this is on the Dark Arista label. Um, I, as much as I love the singles off this album, this is the one album that doesn't really have a lot of songs aside from the hits that I really like. Other than a Linda song, some of the other, I mean, they're good. Sunrise is good too, but they're just average Manilow for me. Um, there's better stuff on the earlier albums. And I do love that shot of New York in his profile. I think that was a brilliant album cover. Next up came his first greatest hits album. Now, in this form, you can't find this anymore. This is out of print. What they did later on was break it up into 3: Greatest Hits Volume 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3. And Volume 1 was cut down considerably because this actually contains all of his singles and about 6 album tracks that they did to get it all on a 2-disc set, which really wasn't necessary. That was Arista simply trying to mine money out of everything. But it does have all of his singles, as well as album tracks like Bandstand Boogie and New York City Rhythm, Beautiful music is on here all the time. So, the newer version might actually be a more concise collection than this one, but it's still a great album, and it's Barry. And again, one of those terrible photos of him. I mean, he doesn't look bad in this. It's just so 1970s. We'll leave we'll leave that as it is. I bring this up because I'm going to bring up the other greatest hits album in a little bit. Next up, my second favorite album from Barry, One Voice from 1979. This, I actually love this cover shot, and this is got a lot of great songs on it. Actually, I was wrong there. That's not the second favorite, third favorite. This has Ships, and what else is the single off here? Ships, I Don't Want to Walk Without You, and When I Wanted You came from this album. This does have two really top-notch album tracks. There's Bobby Lee, What's the Difference, I Gotta Live, which tells the story of a teenage girl who basically wants to be a star but ends up doing, what she has to do to survive in Hollywood. And a beautiful song called Where Are They Now, talking about old friends he's lost. Love this stuff, and it's absolutely terrific. Again, there's some good stuff on here, but it's just like Even Now, it's kind of uneven, and the title track remains one of my all-time favorite songs overall of all time, not just his, but overall. His a cappella performance overdubbed, it's just fantastic. From 1979, One Voice. Now, I have two copies of this. The other copy is somewhere around here, probably in my new purchases. This is the original. It's got some damage at the bottom. Barry from 1980. This is where he started to slip. All of these albums were big hits and produced a number of big hits. The only big hit to come off of Barry from 1980 was I Made It Through the Rain, which hit the top 10. But he also did release, there was another single, Lonely Together, which missed the top 40 entirely. The first song I knew that missed the top 40, it peaked at, I think, 42 or 43. And this album has two songs on it that are classics for me. They're album classics. There's Dance Away, which is this interesting story about couple dancing, literally. And The Last Duet, which was Barry's parody of all the duets that had been going on. By the time this came out, there had been You Don't Bring Me Flowers, Enough Is Enough, Reunited, all these other stuff. So we teamed up with actress and comedian Lily Tomlin on The Last Duet. It's quite a gem and deserved a lot more attention than it got. Bermuda Triangle, which was a very contrived attempt to repeat the success of Copacabana, doesn't even come close for me, although it did hit the top 20 in Britain as a single. I never really cared for it myself, so there's that. 1981's If I Should Love Again is another one of those albums that is just one of those albums. It's good. It's his most romantic album, probably. It features the old songs, Let's Hang On and Somewhere Down the Road. Loved his cover of Let's Hang On. I was a bit surprised it wasn't a bigger hit. But I really, the old songs is a great little, romance ending little song, and Somewhere Down the Road, the same thing. Outside of that, though, it doesn't really jump out at me as a favorite album. Of course, as always, it has the artwork and the lyric sleeve and the black Arista label. Oh, no, this has got the early 80s Arista label, sorry. Back in there. All right, slip in there. I listened to it quite a bit when it was out, but I haven't really listened to it that much because it was not one of my favorite albums by him. It's just there. Critics liked it a lot, especially adult contemporary critics, and that's a good sketch from the front cover also. Next up is an album you won't even find in Wikipedia because I don't think it was in print very long. It's not an album, it's an EP. And it wasn't in print for very long, and I'm glad I grabbed it when I did, because when you look around for it, it sometimes goes for 3 times as much as it was selling for at the time. This is Oh Julie from 1982. It features Some Kind of Friend, which was the big single off this, although Oh Julie was also a single. It wasn't a big hit. Some Kind of Friend became a bigger hit than this. Just those 4 tracks. It's a quick EP from Arista. Also features his cover of I'm Gonna Sit Down and Write Myself a Letter, and the song Heaven, which later became associated with the Copacabana movie that he did, which I don't have the soundtrack for. I never did buy it. Um, but it's a nice little thing to have. Wikipedia doesn't even list this in his discography, which I find is interesting. I don't know. Next up, another terrible shot. Here Come the Night from 1982. This album has his exquisite version of Memory from Cats. It also features Some Kind of Friend, which was on the Oh Julie EP. Um, this has some of my favorite album tracks on it. I love his version of Some Girls, which was also out around the same time by Scott Baio, of all people. Um, the 2 final tracks on side 2, Heart of Steel and Stay, great songs, typical Manilow stuff and sound, great wall of sound stuff. And I really feel like this kind of got the shaft because 2 of the songs from Oh Julie were on here, and so he didn't really take the time to do anything big with this. Um, Neither one of the songs were that big of a hit on the pop chart. They both did well on the AC chart, which is where Manilow really excelled in the 80s, of course, and again with the blue and white Arista label from the mid 80s. Next up was Greatest Hits Volume 2. Now, this is no longer in print either. That's part of the newer collection 1, 2, and 3. It was merged into that. I bring this up because this, unlike the first album, has 3 original songs, including his incredible Jim Steinman collaboration, Read 'em and Weep. It also has a great duet with Ronnie Milsap called Put a Quarter in the Jukebox. And I think the other new song is You're Looking Hot Tonight. Here's the inner sleeve. Yeah, You're Looking Hot Tonight was the other one. The 3 new songs and 7 previous releases. It's kind of early to do a greatest hits album when he hadn't really done anything that was huge since that first one came out, except Ships. I think Ships was the biggest of all of them. Maybe I Made It Through the Rain. This was at the point when I started to disconnect from Barry Manilow a little bit. I loved his music, but he wanted to do some experimental stuff. He was interested in doing some jazz and some swing music and a few other things, and it wasn't my cup of tea, in all honesty. Now, I was in my early 20s when all this was going on. These were all from my teens and early 20s. And I remember when this came out. And the single was When October Goes. But 2 AM Paradise Cafe was his final Arista album of his first run. It did not sell that well compared to the other stuff. And I didn't pick it up for 5 years after it came out. You can see mine's a cutout. I have a cutout there. Because I wanted to complete my Arista set, my early Arista set. It's a good album. I mean, I know that now. But at the time, I was just not thrilled with it. When October Goes is mournful. It's also boring in places. The album itself overall is pretty good if you're into jazz. For me, it still doesn't cut it with the rest of the albums, but that's me. It's just my personal taste. I know some people really like this. Now, after A falling out with his friend Clive Davis, Barry decided to jump labels. He'd been with Arista since 1975 when his Bell contract was rolled over. And 10 years later, he jumped to RCA for one album, Manilow. There were no hits off this album. I'm Your Man was the single. Um, and Sweet Heaven, which came out from the Copacabana TV movie he did, was a single. But, In Search of Love was a single too. None of them charted in a major way. And it is extremely weird to see Barry Manilow on the RCA label. He's always been Arista Records, you know? Um, the sales were disappointing, and so when Clive and he settled things, he went back and signed a new deal with Arista, and the first album he came up with is the last album I have on vinyl by him, Swing Street. This is a much better compilation of older swing music than 2 a.m. Paradise Cafe was for my personal taste. This has some great stuff on it. Um, I really love Hey Mambo with King Creole and the Coconuts, but it has a lot of great swing music and fun stuff with Phyllis Hyman and Tom Scott and Jerry Mulligan and Stan Getz and Diane Shore. A lot of great stuff here that I liked much better than I liked off of 2 a.m. Paradise Cafe. Now, this is the last vinyl I have from Barry Manilow, but I didn't stop buying him. I bought 3 or 4 things on CD, but at this point in time, my interest in him started to wane because everything started to sound the same, um, except for these experimental albums. Um, the album Barry Manilow that came out in 1990, which had Keep Each Other Warm on it, wasn't bad, but I loved Live on Broadway, which came out in 1991 on CD, and it was, a fantastic album. Showstoppers, which was all show tunes, was a fantastic album. Um, but after that, I kind of fell on the wayside by him. I'm just kind of looking. Let me look through the Wikipedia here. Oh, I thought I had it. I thought I had it pulled up. I did at one point, but I didn't get any of the greatest hits of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. I've listened to them online and I liked them fine, but I never purchased them. I never purchased the soundtrack from Copacabana. It was available originally only through mail order. I think it's actually part of the catalog now. Um, and I mean the TV movie, not the Broadway show. And the Broadway show, of course, is out there. Um, but he has done a couple of projects that I mean, I bought Ultimate Manilow when it came out. It's got all of his hits on it. It's fantastic. I also bought digital, my first digital purchase from Barry, his album from, I believe, 2010 called 15 Minutes. It's a concept album about fame, rising and falling in fame. And it's actually a really good album. It's my favorite Manilow album in years. I just loved what he did on that album. Um, I do have a DVD of the Live in Broadway that my mother-in-law gave me, and I made an audio copy for her. And I have numerous singles by Barry in my 45s collection. I've been getting a few of them from Don and Mary, also that I didn't have on 45 originally. Barry has a very soft spot in my heart. I like his music, and he was a very big part of my childhood, my teen years. He was popular then in the 1970s. Of course, well, a couple of his songs were part of that glorious summer of 78. We'll be talking about the summer. Um, and he was, people often poo poo him as simple, plain music, and he's anything but. I mean, his version of Memory is far superior to Barbra Streisand's version. Any other cover I've ever heard of it, the only one that's better is the original from the Broadway show Cats. Um, love his work with Jem Steinman on Read 'Em and Weep. Um, Everybody was recording with Jem Steinman around that time because of the success of Meatloaf's album in 1978, and then Bonnie Tyler and Total Eclipse of the Heart, and Air Supply, Making Love Out of Nothing at All. Barry's Read 'em and Weep was fantastic. There's just no going wrong. He's done some classics to me. A lot of people kind of poo-poo I Write the Songs, and he didn't write. Ironically, he did not write I Write the Songs. Bruce Johnston of the Beach Boys wrote that song, but he had the hit with it. And Johnson was the one that won the Grammy for Song of the Year that year because he was the songwriter. Um, but Manilow, it's Manilow's signature song. Um, everything that he does is, I mean, even today, he's still a very entertaining man and still a competent vocalist, even though he's, if I'm not mistaken, he's either pushing or just turned 80. He's an amazing songwriter. So much of his greatest songs were left in the albums rather than put out on singles, which is too bad because some of them, although I have to admit I don't think they would have sold on pop radio, with a couple of exceptions. They might have done better on AC, but AC was always his top market anyway. Um, he's someone to give a listen to. If you like well plotted songs, if you like the story songs in particular, which he is a master of, along with Rupert Holmes and a couple of other people, um, he's an incredible artist. I know he was always big with the ladies. He remains big with the ladies, even though he finally came out as gay a few years ago, which he'd never admitted to, although it'd been suspected since the late 80s, I think. Um, he's remains a top performer in Vegas. He is never going to go away. You're going to hear Barry Manilow classics on the radio for the next 100 years. There are songs that he does that he will always be on the radio simply because they're just that damn good. Um, he's somebody that I wish more people would really give a deep listen to, take a deep dive into the music of, because he deserves better, so much better than he gets sometimes. And he's definitely one of my influencers. I don't know how else to put it. Um, Thank you for taking this trip down memory lane with me with my Barry Manilow obsession from the 70s and 80s. And I thank you for watching Influencers and all of the TKR Video Central stuff. Please subscribe and like if you haven't done so already. And please leave a comment. I'm always listening to what you say and what you are talking about, because whatever you're telling me is what I'm getting the feedback on, and it's been great from everything that I do, and I thank you for that. Don't forget to check out my other shows throughout the week, our daily my daily Obscuria, Monday through Friday at 11, and my weekly show on Saturday afternoons, where I talk about news and features and bring you people you should be listening to and all kinds of other stuff. And thank you for understanding that these are always just my tastes, and I love who I love, and there's nothing wrong with that. Same for you, too. That's what influencers mean and what they're all about. For Influencers, I'm TC Kirkham. We'll see you next time. Ciao, baby.